Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar on the Building the Future of Workforce. Thank you for taking the time to spend some time with us today, whether you're joining us live or later on demand. We have a great lineup for you today. This is a real hot topic for us, and we've got a super lineup of experts to have a great chat over the next 45 minutes. My name is Elaine. I'm the Global Insurance Lead at UiPath, and I'm going to be your moderator today. We're going to kick off with some housekeeping rules first off, just to let you know the format and how we're going to run today. The housekeeping rules for today will be is we are going to do a couple of polls, and that's just to get your input. Make sure we're answering your questions and we're on topic. So we'll launch those in a couple of minutes. We'll also have some handouts, and those handouts can be downloaded during the session and they'll be available afterwards as well. You will be on mute today. However, that doesn't mean you can't have a chat. There is a chat option here, so you can chat with the panelists, or you can actually ask a question as well in the Q&A. And we have my lovely colleague Satya, who has 20+ years experience in insurance as well, answering those questions throughout the session today. So please feel free to do that. And just to get us going on that, if you'd like to pop into the chat where you're coming from us today, it would be great to see, you know, who's coming, who's joining us from what parts of the world as well. So if you could do that, that will be great, and then we'll actually get going. Let's see. So let's start off the topic. Let me set the scene now, take a couple of minutes to set the scene. Obviously, we've been in very strange times over the last year, and all our workforces have been impacted. And we were just having a chat with a panelist saying, actually, most of us are still working from home and certainly not traveling. So looking at sort of the state of the play at the moment, we're talking about a lot of workforces at home, a lot saying how will actually the new work be, people are starting to realize that probably technology is going to change their jobs. So we're looking at this particular topic today, and one of the main reasons today to have this session is to actually get a view and actually learn. I know when I was a customer, the reason for joining these sessions was certainly to hear from other people, to get some inspiration, to hear their stories, and really importantly, to get sort of lessons learned as well. Now, I'm going to introduce our lovely panel today as well. And while we're introducing the panel, our lovely Paula is going to set off a poll and see if we've got some questions here. Now I'm going to ask the panelists to come on online, and we can start to meet them. I'm going to start introductions with Jean first. We'll go ladies first. And Jean, let me give an overview, an introduction to Jean. Now, there's no way, looking at the credentials and the bio of our lovely panel here, there's no way I can do them justice. But let me start off by giving you a little bit of background. So Jean has 20+ years experience in insurance. She's the VP, Chief Digital Officer and Lean Six Sigma at Security Benefit. With her 20 years experience, she's applied that to RPA, combining Lean Six Sigma and RPA skills to look at automation and how it can drive efficiencies and various other benefits across the business. Jean's an early adopter, Security Benefit, an early adopter of this, and she's got a great philosophy where they look at stuff wing to wing. And what does that mean? They don't just automate part of a process, they look at the whole thing. So Jean, welcome to our panel and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Jeff. Jeff comes from innovation strategist at Encova. And Encova is a one-stop shop for insurance and a big focus on innovation. And obviously, great to see that in the title. Again, 20+ years experience from Jeff, and are all around technology. And Jeff's been on his automation journey for the last 2 years, and with a real focus now on scaling and bringing automation to all departments across it and upping it to intelligent automation. So welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we've got Rob. Rob joins us from Unum, and he is the AVP Transformation and Data Science. And a really interesting, looking at his bio, 15 plus years again experience in automation and technology, and his focus area is automation, audit and risk management. And we're going to talk about that today and how there's been a real surge in sort of the 3 lines of defense. He leads the transformation and data science efforts for the enterprise audit, and he's responsible for driving innovation and change. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
Great, it's great to have. I'm going to just change my little camera here so I can actually see you all. So let's kick off now. To get
Elaine, we've got the polls results. If you'd like to share those, they're up on the screen. If you can see them.
I can't see them right now.
So if you'd like, I can review the answers. The question was, is there a future work skilling program in your organization? And 40% said not yet, but there is talk. And 60% said yes, we trained employees, planning for more. So,
but that's a good result. So it is on people's minds that people are starting to look at the future workforce, and certainly the sessions I'm involved with customers, it's certainly up the top of that at the moment. So to get to know our panelists, I'm going to ask everybody to give us a little story. And when I had my insurance user group, I certainly asked all the new members to tell me what were they most proud of and some lessons learned. So I'm going to start off with asking Jean. Jean, would you like to share one of your proudest moments and best lessons learned around this lovely topic we've got?
I think mine was my most satisfying win. Not necessarily our biggest win, but a most satisfying for me personally and from standing up the organization with my team. We reported directly in through the CFO at the time, and when we were working on metrics, how to measure our success, we were coming up with a multitude of metrics on how can we do this. We were early on, it was 3 years ago, there weren't a lot of guidance out there, so we were coming up with different things, and we used, of course, hours removed. I mean, that's what everybody uses initially, but we also came up with hours gained, because what we were finding is we were doing a lot of projects where people just didn't have the time to get to the information. It was a lot of manual work. They just didn't have time to do it. And we added that as a metric on and started reporting out on that metric. And our CFO kind of gave us, he just wasn't buying in. He said, I don't understand. Why would I want to measure hours gained? I said, well, they're digital workers. And I finally got him to understand, because he had a project come through on a reporting project. Even though I had several projects throughout the company and I would explain those, it wasn't until one hit his line of business, his area of responsibility, that it finally made sense to him. And I said, okay, your hours gained on that was 2,500 hours. And he's like, how did you figure that out? And I said, basically, if you had wanted somebody to create that 50-page pack for you on a monthly basis, it would have taken a full head count if they were having to do it all manually. We digitized it, we made it so it's push button, and now you get it delivered, and you didn't need to bring on an additional head. And all of a sudden, that was like the trigger. And at our final report out at the end of the year, it was with all the senior leadership, and he actually spoke up on that point and said, you know, when they first came around, I didn't really get the whole hours gained. And he goes, that is such an important metric, because now we can really understand how much time did we remove from the business and how much time did we gain from just the digital workers. So that was actually finally very satisfying for him to finally admit that we were right and he was not right. So that was my proudest, biggest win, I think, for the team and for RPA itself, to show the true value.
That's great, Jean. Thank you for that. And creating capacity, I've seen that across a lot of customers now, where they're creating capacities and doing more, where maybe they were doing proportional risk-based stuff or sampling, And now
Yep.
they're saying, actually, a bot can work 24/7. Why not? Why not do sort of more with that? So that's brilliant. Jeff, would you like to share one of your nice stories with our audience today?
Sure. It was very similar to Gene's story with a slightly different outcome that was unexpected. We were standing up. We had gone through the proof of concept with UiPath and RPA in general, and we were really implementing that first project, and we were trying to get buy-in and just hitting a lot of walls, a lot of pushback. You know, this isn't the way we do things. Typically, you know, it would follow more of a standard, more typical software development technology stack like Java or .NET. But we came in and we tried to do this. We completed the automation extremely fast by a comparison of what it would take someone to do in Java or .NET. And then it started to execute. And we got a few months into it. And what we ended up doing, it was a conversion project. So we were converting policy records from the mainframe into Guidewire. And we got a couple months into it, and the VP of commercial lines, these were commercial lines policies, said, you know, I was really skeptical about this, but I'm glad you talked me into it because I was able to reduce my temporary labor staff by 2 in all of this. And so then we immediately jumped from the hours given back or the hours gained metrics that we were quoting to say, well, wait a minute, here's an actual hard dollar savings that you implemented, you know, just 2 months into this. This bot running these various conversions. So that was a huge eye opener for everyone throughout the organization when that got communicated out. So that was something that was, I don't know if I'm proud of it, but that was definitely the biggest eye opener. And the lesson learned from that is you got to market. When those things happen, you got to market them, and you got to brag about yourself, and that'll really help your project move forward.
And Jeff, a really sort of important lesson there, because we're used to sort of long, chunky IT projects. And we talk about this enabling technology being much quicker, much agile, deliver results much quicker. But obviously you jumped in and did that and showed people, actually look at what we can do with this in probably quite a short period of time.
Yes, and that's a key too. You don't want to take on the world. You don't want to try to boil the ocean with this, especially with your first one, because you're not used to it. So I talk about a commercial lines policy, and it was the basic account information. You know, it was the policyholder basic information. It was some additional insureds. It was locations, simple things like that at the account level. We eventually got into coverages as future projects, but we did that kind of crawl, walk, run approach to it. And we saw that savings right off the bat with just that first little chunk. So definitely keep it small. And show rapid results, basic agile concepts.
Great. Thank you for that. Rob, tell us about the world of audit and what you've been doing there.
Sure. Well, I'll take a step back before I just jump into the audit piece. So, you know, Unum is a global absence management, disability, and voluntary benefits insurance provider. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is rapidly grow our business to protect the lives of 45 million people. And so while growing our business, we also want to delight our customers. And that means that giving them all the information and support that they need when they need it most. To do that well, we need to work more efficiently, and so that we can make bigger investments in more transformative and higher value areas. And that's where we're on a journey using these process mining capabilities. And one of the areas we're working to transform at Unum is the internal audit organization using those capabilities. You know, because we're an insurance company, one of the key areas that we look at is how we are managing the claim management lifecycle and how we are meeting the service level agreements with the employers that we do business with. And we offer, you know, several different products and currently serve 38 million customers, trying to target that 45 million. And to audit that level of activity in an efficient way, we really just needed to better understand ourselves, because I think we talked about it a minute ago, which is, you know, it's been sample basis. And so how do we really understand how well we're servicing those 38 million customers? We've been using the UiPath process mining to do that, and that's catalyzed an increased level of automation for us. And so while we're still on this journey, we've been able to automate the coverage that we were previously doing in a manual way by over 25%, and it's really proved to be a worthwhile investment. And then at the same time, in the last year, during this journey, COVID hit. And Unum has been processing more leave and absence management claims related to COVID than our entire, 100-year history. And so our active work with process mining at that time allowed us last June to really diagnose some of the volume challenges we were experiencing in our business. And it created an opportunity for us to model sort of future impact.
That's great. That's brilliant to hear. I mean, from all three of you, hearing sort of real and relevant sort of examples, which is what we always want to hear, isn't it? This technology is out there. It's been out there a few years now, but what are people doing with it? What are they really trying to solve? Because that's what it's about, sort of solving a problem. We're going to get on to our topic now of the day, which is the future work. And Paula is going to launch another poll. I'm hoping I can see the results on this time, Paula. And while we do that, let me give you a little view about the sort of future work. Lots of studies out there at the moment. Lots of information coming from foresters about 80% of work, of insurance work, is going to be impacted. Now, not replaced, but impacted by technology. Is that what's going to start happening? So we want to hear about, how is this going to actually, and can we prepare for it? And how can we actually look at the future and actually start to provide the skills, the training, and get ready for this stuff that's coming, and really investors, so I suppose, in our employees as well. Have we got the results of that poll? Paul?
Yes, so we've got the poll up, Elaine. What challenges are you seeing? And
Yep.
we've got probably 50% of folks have voted, so I am going to close the poll. And let's share the results here. So what challenges are you seeing? It looks like finding the right opportunity and business case, 20%. Having the resources, capabilities, 60%. And people don't trust AI yet, 20%.
Okay. Interesting. So let's see if we can answer some of those throughout our session today. Certainly about opportunities and sort of trusting AI as well, and capability. And that's a really important one, which is our topic today: future, the workforce, and how can we get people ready. I briefly wanted to share this, and this is just a bit of a fun slide. And if you wanted to do some reading, there's a future fit thing with Forrester there. It's quite interesting, but it starts to talk about the skills that we need for the future in uncertain times. And you'll notice that a lot of them are around soft skills, knowledge skills, and what type of roles. And these reports start to look at, and certainly the World Economic Forum one there, I found it was a really interesting read, because it's broken down by region. So there will be one on EMEA, there will be one on the Americas. What's happening in those areas? So let's see if we can do that. Now, let's start off by asking. I'm going to start off with Rob on the sort of a future of work. Using sort of automation in your space, with the 3 lines of defense, as I mentioned, more and more questions are certainly coming from those roles where I'm talking to customers. What do you see? Do you see the roles changing? Do you see the value or the emphasis of work changing in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I get this question and interest a lot. So one of the great things about process mining for us has been the level of point in time and ongoing insights that the capability can provide. Our use case has been using this capability to further enable automation in the 3rd line of defense, being internal audit. But that ultimately, better supports how we are servicing our employers and our policyholders as customers. And the level of insight that the technology can provide is one that we're really looking to enable those 2nd and 1st lines. So while we're maybe doing it for ourselves today and to catalyze automation and to give us a level of insight, I think the longer term view is, how do we enable the 2nd line of defense, being your compliance and your risk management type of functions, and then ultimately the first line of defense being the frontline business management that interfaces with the customer. And so how can we take the same insights that we're getting today and pass that forward? And what this does is, in the end, this provides great value to both the first and the second line of defense, but also allows the audit function to have ongoing, monitoring capabilities, so really understanding the depth and breadth of risk without necessarily using, resources to understand those things in a manual auditing way, and instead can focus on newer and potentially even more complex activities.
Yeah, I love that. So there's very much a future focus, obviously, in your company for those roles and how those roles will evolve,
Yes.
which is great. Let me come to Jean. Now, Jean, I've heard about Rohr, and you might want to explain that to people. There's sort of the whole people emphasis in your company, which is when I met you at in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. I thought this is great. This is a real people focus, not leaving anybody behind. Would you like to share your story about the people side? I think you're on mute, Jean.
There you go. And in November of 2019, my COE in the RPA area, Amy Chandler, and I sat down and tried to figure out what could we do for the upcoming year. How much time out of the business could we do? And our business, we have a lot of the information, the business outsourced, our applications and so forth are outsourced to our sister companies. So we don't do a lot of that processing where a lot of our PA teams get their big wins, right, with data entry and that type of stuff. We just didn't have it. So we decided to come up with a plan, and we called it Rohr 20K. And Rohr stood for Review, Optimize, Automate, and Reward. And we've got the backing from our HR, our CEO, our CFO, and the rest of the business. And our CIO, they all came together and they agreed that this would be a great thing for us to push. And so our CEO sent out an email. They agreed to make everybody have a goal for this, and it was to take at least one manual process off your desk in 2020. And we started in November, and we were just looking for 20,000 hours, which to us seemed like a lot because, like I said, we didn't have a whole lot of easy wins. We didn't have any easy wins on that. Well, as the year went along, we ended up, I think, almost 50% of our company participated, and we either removed or gained over 54,000 hours of time we tracked in all the projects. Now, they weren't all RPA, but most of them were. And we did have some big wins in RPA. When the business leaders got behind it, we had competition. So like the department that had the most implemented projects for the quarter, they got Rohr awards. It's a traveling trophy. And so there really became this big competition between finance and investments. They really both wanted to win it. And those two areas, the CFO and our Chief Investment Officer, have been great supporters and really driving people to think about it, identify those projects. And so it was such a success that we brought it along into 2021. And this year it's Rohr 21K, because everybody thought, even though the 20K was for 20,000 hours, everybody thought it just meant for 2020. So we just kind of let them think that, and then they wanted to change the title to 21K, so we said that's fine, and we changed our target to 21K. So it has been a real success, and basically what we saw was once an individual did one project, then they started seeing multiple projects. And about mid-year, we started tracking even those individuals that were part of multiple projects. And of like the 50% overall, I think 20% to 25% ended up being part of more than one project that got implemented. And so you really saw that once they saw how easy it was, especially in the RPA, and how quickly we could turn and give them relief in an area that they couldn't do or couldn't support completely, the funnel just opened. And we have an innovation hub where people put in ideas, and we started with about 150 ideas. And at one point in time during 2020, we were up to almost 190 new ideas that hadn't been implemented. And I think we're back down to about 150 now, but month over month, we were staying at about 150 to 160 ideas in the Innovation Hub, and we were just taking those and just working them. And so it really became I was concerned when we all went home in March whether or not we could even sustain, because we had, all kinds of marketing material plans so they could see it and none of that worked, right? They're at home on their desk. The pennants are all hanging. We now have a pennant wall instead of the pennants. Everybody was going to get a little pennant that participated. And those are all still on a wall in my office and with stars for every project. And when I looked at those, I was in the office yesterday and I looked, because we're keeping them until everybody gets back in the office. Most of those pennants, of the half of the participants, have multiple stars, which means they've been involved in multiple projects, and some, the pennants are just covered. It's just amazing that people gravitated toward it. It was easy to think of. Rohr 21K means something to people, and they're like, okay, what's my Rohr 21K goal? What am I going to do? And it's just out in front, and it worked really, really well. But it worked because senior leadership got behind it. So.
That's a great story, and making it very real and relevant for everybody and getting them involved, because engagement is one of those success factors you have to go wide and deep across the organization. So that's brilliant. We talked about, Jeff, we come on to you now, where you talked about engaging people and getting them involved and how important this is, the people side of all of this change. Could you tell us about it? Because I know you've been doing automation. You mentioned on the back of transformation and M&A, and now you're obviously looking forward to say, how is this going to actually improve and change your company?
Yeah, I would say this is definitely going to be a part of the technology stack for a fair majority of the workforce in the future. However, right now you do face a lot of challenges. People hear robotic process automation, and it's not the thing most people think of. Oh, I could do that. So it's a conversation of, well, you really could do that, and let's talk about how you can do that. We started a little over 2 years ago, and we formed a center of excellence around it. And we have dedicated RPA developers and a dedicated business analyst or two, and then we also have some temporary work staff where people were interested, and these were mostly IT folks. And we've said, yeah, here we can show you, we can give you the online training that UiPath provides is excellent. We can provide a one-on-one mentor to really get you started. If you want to come to our stand-ups, you're more than welcome. You can use our servers to run unattended automations on that use Orchestrator and are pretty robust. You can also run attended automations, on your own desktop. You obviously have to worry about your own licensing at that point and things of that. We do have the new Studio licenses really helped share, or the old version of Studio licenses really helped us share. Now they're down to named licenses, and we had to kind of go through that conversion process. So it's a little bit more cumbersome from a licensing standpoint, but definitely still doable. And so that gives that gets it out to some IT folks that already had interest. But then also what we've done is we've come through and gone to businesses, and we get a lot of requests for automations that we really have to turn down, mostly because they just don't pay for us to do it. If you think about all the overhead a center of excellence goes through, it works like any other technology. There's a lot of overhead with requirements gathering and elicitation, and then documentation to be able to turn it over to a developer. And when you're talking about a 7 to 10 step process, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you also have user acceptance testing and deployment. So we've tried to push back and say, well, what if we could teach you how to do this and guide someone through that process of trying to do that? That we've had mild success with that. We've written attended automations for people and just let them execute it and watch how it goes and let them take it from there. But ultimately what we've decided, at least right now, there's definitely a technology savvy stack of people or a set of people who can use this technology and pick it up fairly intuitively, whether it's UiPath or another automation technology. That they can get those and they can run them attended. But then there are some groups in our organization that's just not a reality right now, and we recognize that. And so one of the really nice things about Orchestrator is they have an API stack. So we wrote a really simple portal for folks. We call it the automation portal, and people can go in and they can actually execute whatever automation, assuming they have the rights, can execute whatever automation they have. So this really helped us, and our security team actually likes it a lot too, because we're automating things that they had to give admin access to a lot of individuals, such as a CSR to reset a password. They had to have full-blown admin access into Okta or one of the other security technologies, and now they've just created a service account that only the robot knows about. Orchestrator keeps confidential, and now all these people can go in and it's all logged. They can run the automation. They don't have admin rights, so our auditing likes this a lot better. And it still gets that feeling, that robot in anyone's hands who actually needs it without having to have that technology in place. So we've kind of worked around that, but I would definitely say in the future, this is going to be a technology stack that most people should know, like Excel macros.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point there. Making it accessible is obviously really important to get the people who are really interested going on it, and you know, word of mouth and success breeds success. And you talked there about sort of all the academy training is free. So if we talk about, you know, the future workforce and people sort of in some degree taking responsibility for their own training, they could go and do all this stuff, couldn't they, Jeff, themselves? They could actually start looking at this training and start actually looking at digital skills themselves. Both a company responsibility and an individual responsibility that if you're interested, jump in.
Oh, yes, I would definitely agree with that. I think there does have to be some, it's not as easy as saying, here's the link to the academy. I mean, you do have to have some form of mentorship there. You know, yeah. There needs to be the interest. There needs to be some form of technical savviness as well. But yeah, yes, I think by and large, most people could go through a program like that with the right guidance and guide rail setup.
Yeah, and it's certainly something we're seeing, democratizing it across, and we've got a lot of customers with sort of citizen-led stuff in trial. But you're right, in our business, in a regulated business, we need to look at the governance and the structure and the quality of that, and how can we do that? How can we do it in a safe way that we're going to go on? I'm going to ask you guys a bit of a question now, just and some of this is sort of down to, you know, there is hype out there. But also, you know, it's a real topic as well. So what do you think about digital assistants? And let me tell you first of all what I think a digital assistant is from a non-techie point of view. So Jeff, you might disagree with me, coming from a real technical background. So a digital assistant sort of sitting on your desktop, where it can be either, you know, it's available on demand, it's got a list of tasks it can do for you. It can, you know, tap you on the shoulder if it's noticing stuff, or you can just control it and say, actually, I want to do X, Y, and Z. For a claims officer, it could be, you know, I want to pull some claims information, policy, endorsement, any complaints around it, anything like that. Do a KYC check, let's say. So that's the context of it. Can I ask you guys if you think this is a reality? Do we think we're going to have digital assistants? Some people say we're going to have them in our personal lives before we'll actually have them in our work lives. But real interest in, you know, we're talking about these now at the moment. So let me start off by Jean asking you, what do you think? Do you think digital assistants are coming for everybody, or maybe they're already on their way?
I think they are. I constantly try to push my team to say, how can we even make our RPA more of a digital assistant for people? Could we give them, you know, a chat bot that they could just go in and type and say, go run this? You know, now that the API is there into the orchestrator, we've got some of that working as well. We have an individual that's starting to use that. So in the basic terms, that's kind of a personal assistant. You know, she wants to go run this whenever she needs to run it. and it saves her a lot of time. You know, otherwise she'd be doing it manually. So she logs into the orchestrator, launches it, and it goes. And so in the most basic format, to me, that's there. And I know other technologies are coming out with them. I've looked at other digital assistants throughout, you know, other, you know, add-ons even into Outlook. I've got one that will send out to someone if we're trying to meet, it'll send my calendar out and said, here's the open spots, pick one. So that's a digital assistant. So are they going to be, they're here. They're just, people don't think of them as a digital assistant. To me, that technology to send my calendar out to someone and say, pick a time, to me, that's it. That's what my actual assistant typically had done. She doesn't have to do that anymore. They can pick their time and we can meet. So I definitely think it's coming.
Great.
How
So,
cost effective it's going to be, I think that's the barrier right now, is the cost structure.
so Jean, do you remember when we all were looking for mobile phones at one point? I'm old enough to remember you had to get in a queue
The
and be
bag.
told,
Yeah,
that's expensive now, you're not getting one, you're not senior enough. And now obviously we throw them at everybody because I think we get an extra 2 hours work a day out of everybody for them. So I think that economies of scale sort of will come. I'm going to ask I'm going to ask sort of Rob now. Rob, I've been working on sort of persona-led sort of task automation and giving them out in digital assistants. And one of them, as you know, because I've sent you an email on it, was for an auditor. And we take these high frequency tasks, little tasks, and we put them there. And not forcing people to use them, just saying, you know, these might be handy. These might be good for you to actually start sort of running during your day, and it might save you an hour, half an hour a week, 2 hours, whatever. So what do you think, Robin, in your world? Do you think it's coming, it's here?
Yeah, it's coming, it's here. I think there's a mix, and it comes down to skill and comfort level of the individual. But I think at the end of the day, I think there's, you know, we need to start thinking about our work in the same way that we think about our personal lives. You know, at home, we're always looking for more time to spend in new and exciting ways. And we've been accustomed to having the information about our personal lives at our fingertips and in a mobile way. And so what we really need to do is start thinking about our work in that way. How can we do our work in that way? And how can we offer our services in a more digital way? And that aligns with the expectations in our personal lives. And so, yeah, I think what we want to be able to do, we're doing some of that work, you know, currently. It's early days, but even just metrics, reporting, information like that at our fingertips that we wouldn't historically have, or being able to maybe meet with a business partner and take a temperature about something, right? Just get that real-time instant feedback about something. How are things going on in your organization? Right? It could be a 3-point scale. You could capture that information live, record it. You have a team of 100 people meeting with business partners all the time. If we have a pulse on what's going on in the organizations, what kind of fun or interesting heat map would that tell us? And what would that tell us about the stability of the controls in that organization based on, quote, how things are going? So there's a lot of different ways to use technology, to audit in different ways, to get insights about our business, and to really just bring that right to your fingertips. Because I think a lot of times people will be like, well, what's going on with your projects, or how is this going, and things like that. Just having those mobile kind of insights are really important.
That's great. I mean, this is when the sort of power of data and insight at your fingertips starts to really come into play, which will actually transfer how we work, the future work. So Jeff, what do you think from your point of view? You've touched on some of it already. Is it coming? Is it there? Is it ready?
Yeah, in addition to trying to push RPA out, we're always trying to make automation smarter and you know, more user friendly, which comes with AI and those digital assistants that you're talking about. And I agree with everybody else. They're pocketed right now. They're kind of siloed. There's a lot of them out there for very specific things. I don't know if everyone will have one by 2025, but I think as time moves on, more and more people will have them. And as time moves on, they will become less siloed and more enterprise agnostic, and more advanced and more skilled and more, you know, more depth and breadth of topics and searches.
Yeah, I mean, we have those visions of the future, don't we, where you talk to it. I mean, we're already doing that with I've got an Alexa at home. And you can add stuff to your shopping list or ask it, you know, when's the next bus or whatever. You probably don't have buses locally in America, but we do have buses here in London. And you can ask, you know, what's the weather doing and stuff like that. So I think for a digital assistant that you can start to say, where's this, what am I doing? Give me information, share, collaboration. I'm hoping that's the vision. I'm hoping we're going to get to that quite quickly, and it's going to help us. I'd love it to help me in my job. The next bit I wanted to sort of ask you is, and the 45 minutes has gone super quick, is your sort of top tip. I love to ask people this, because certainly the questions that come in that we've been getting, people really want to know, you know, lessons learned. Well, what hole should I not fall in? What's the best thing to do? So Jean, can I ask you, what would your top tip be for somebody that you would take with you?
I've kind of got two. First of all, when you stand up, make sure your change control procedures are in place and you've got good, solid change control. You got good documentation, because you know, that was a lesson I learned from early adapters and in being in the customer panel, hearing people having to start over because they didn't have the right procedures put in place to stand up. So I took that very seriously, and my COE was an auditor in a prior life. So she understood those controls. She did both ICFR and internal audit. So she understood those controls and has done a great job ensuring we didn't fall into those pitfalls, because that was the first one. And then the second one is, as you get into it and you start looking at projects, and a lot of our projects are surround data. And we learned this the hard way. We went into a project and it should have been about a 2-week project. And I think it ended up being a 2 to 3 month project for a programmer because the data was just so bad. You really have to make sure before you start to program, you can't fix bad data. Don't try to fix bad data. Get in there, understand what the data looks like. And if you have to go back and tell the business owner, hey, you got to get your data cleaned up first, and then we'll come in, be happy to, or we'll even be happy to help you fix the data first, but don't expect us to program off of bad data. So those are my 2 tips.
Great, thank you, Jean. I fell into that second one as well, with a project as well. Manky data, should have never done it. And
Yep.
kept going.
Yep.
Shouldn't have.
Yep.
Done that. Rob, what's your top tip?
I love that data one. That resonates with me as well. You know, I think I'm going to take a less technical kind of path here, and I'd say not defining and describing the future state, I think, is maybe biggest mistake or key takeaway. You know, what I've learned is that, and I think people often think this, is that people aren't necessarily change resistant, but I think that's a quick label for many people to say, well, we just have change resistant people. And I hear that used all the time. I think it's that they're not buying what you're selling is what it is. And so to do that part well, you need to do 2 things. You know, one, I think, is quantify the value that the technology or the work will have. Let's get, you know, we talked about Jean having a 20,000 hour goal. That is very tangible, very specific. It has a finish line. You can tell whether you crossed it or not. That's great. And that works for especially senior leaders who are looking to invest in projects. The second, though, is to be able to, you need to qualitatively describe how the work will change for the future, or how the work will change for the future, and how one's role or job will be different. You need to make it real for people. You let people know how, you know, how it will be different and how that will be different for them. And this helps them understand what skills that they may need for the future and give them an opportunity to go after some of those skills. And for some, they may say that this isn't the right work for me. And that's okay too. But really getting in a feelings-based view of how that will change the work for the individual is the part 2 to having that finish line or bucket that you need to fill.
I love that, Rob, that explaining the vision for where it's going, because people like that. They don't like to think, oh, what's the company up to? Explain to me where we're going and what we're doing and what part I'm going to have in it. And as you say, then I can prepare for that. What's coming? And because it's not, you know, it's not going to arrive tomorrow, but I can go on that journey with you. And that comes back to not leaving anybody behind, isn't it, as well? That there's the vision, there's the support, let's do it.
And it can't be a leadership view of the vision. It's got to be a person, individual view of it. And that's where I think leaders get it wrong, right? They talk about, well, here's where we'll be as a company. Okay, I get that. I understand what you're saying. And you've shown me what the finish line may be or the goal that we're trying to go to. But if you told me about what it will mean to me and what my job will be tomorrow and how I'll get out of bed every day and how the work will be different, that makes it different for people. And then people can assess, all right, I'm in on that. And what skills will I need for that? Or no, that's not right for me. That's okay. But getting really clear about that is how you can be successful in this type of work.
Super. Thank you for sharing that. Jeff, what's your top tip?
Oh, I think I could go on for hours just about the bad data topic and what's a good process to automate versus a bad process to automate. But I will say on that note, there are good processes to automate and there are bad processes to automate and there are bad processes not to automate. And when you have bad data, that's probably a good sign that, hey, anything you do is only going to perpetuate bad data more places faster than a person can. But just because a process is inefficient, we've never really shied away from that. I know a lot of my peers will say, no, we need to go fix that process. And a lot of business owners aren't ready to make that investment. And you miss out, I think, on a lot of opportunities because just because the process is inefficient, yes, a person might do it in 2 hours and that's inefficient, but a robot, even if it still takes the robot 2 hours, the robot can keep doing it all night. It's not going to take breaks and do it. And we've seen benefits from that. And we've seen people, we've gotten a lot of praise for that. So I think looking at those processes and not being really black and white about it, is really good. Think about things from the holistic picture. Is this easy to automate? Yes, it may not be the most efficient thing, but it's a robot. Brute force works. I would say that, and keeping in mind, I think this was already hit on, but this is programming. Yes, it's using the user interfaces as opposed to databases and APIs usually. It's still programming. It does need to follow a software development lifecycle. Because as soon as you start doing something you're not supposed to be doing, like any automation, it just makes everything balloon out of control. So you do want to be very careful, and you want to test, and you want to develop, and you want to make sure that the business areas sign off on it. So those would be my two big tips. Lessons learned.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. Like a wealth of experience there, and I think you're right. I think we could sit here all day and actually share the lessons learned and all the stuff that's happened and all the stuff that we will do. But there's a general sort of theme there about, you know, engagement of people, because it's the people who are going to make this successful. And explaining whether it's visioning, whether it's getting them on board, which is really great to have a discussion around that side of it too. So I've got time left to say thank you to the panelists for sharing their experience and their knowledge. And I know there's loads of information and sort of material out there, and we've handed some out as well to get in touch. So I'm sure these guys would be delighted to go on to LinkedIn with you as well. Go on to LinkedIn and ask them a question. They're great at sharing. And so it leaves me to say thank you for everybody for joining us. We hope you have found that useful. It's given you some ideas. And it sounds like, you know, the future of work is coming, is here. These three companies are certainly well onto their journeys and looking to the future. So thank you for joining us. I did want to just finalize on we have an event coming up that may interest you with our CEO Daniel Dinez, who's going to actually talk about our new release and give us our top tips. So that's something you might want to join, and that will be available out on our website. So thank you for everybody for joining us. It's been a pleasure. You've made my job very easy today, and I look forward to meeting you in person. And thank you for everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.